Hi guys, I'm going to show you how to change levels of transparency using your watercolor paints. So I've got my watercolor sketchbook, my pan of paints, a couple of my brushes. You can't see it, but I've got a paper towel set up underneath my watercolor pan and then just a cup of water. So transparency is essentially the amount of water that you're going to use while you paint. So you're going to start with 3 swatches of the exact same color. We're going to use different layers and different amounts of water to create different levels of transparency. So I'm going to use kind of my flat brush, and I'm going to pick a color. So I'm going to use yellow. You can use whatever color you want. And I'm going to go ahead and get my brush nice and wet, and I'm going to dip it in the water and then back in the watercolor pan a couple of times to get it like nice and activated. The more water you use, the more transparent your color is going to be. And you can also use this little pan if you'd like to. I find it helpful to really water down your colors. You can get like the lightest shade using your little watercolor pan. So I'm going to start by using the most water, so you can see my swatch is very light. And then I'm going to go back in, grab a little more paint, add it to my pan. I'm looking for like a medium amount of water to color ratio, and it should look like a little bit darker on your piece of paper when you paint it. And then lastly, I want it to be thick and creamy for the opaque one. Opaque is basically as the least amount of transparent as it could be, so I'm going to use the least amount of water. So I'm going to go straight from my pan onto my piece of paper, and that should appear to be the darkest color or the least transparent color on your piece of paper. So you can see I've got really light, medium, and dark. And if you need to, you can completely let that dry and then add another layer on top once it is dry if you really want to go as opaque as possible on that last one. And then for the 5 bars, you're going to choose 5 different colors to make basically like a gradient. And you can see in my example here that I used multiple colors in a couple just for like blending practice, which you're also welcome to do. So I'm going to start with a blue this time and see what kind of gradient. So I'm going to start with the most opaque color that I can get. So I'm going to use the least amount of water to start with. I'm really trying to get a lot of pigment in my brush. And I'm going to start kind of the same way where I make a swatch at the bottom. And then you're going to move your brush up. And as you do, it's going to get lighter. And that's where I'm just going to start adding some water. So I'm going to use my water to kind of create the transparency as I increase. This one can be fairly challenging. It might take you a couple of tries to be able to get a nice gradient going, but this is also where your paper towel comes in handy. So right now mine's kind of dark. It's a little darker than I want to at the top. So I'm going to use a little bit of water and dab with my paper towel to kind of remove some of that pigment. And then I'm going to go in with a clean brush and smooth out the gradient, trying to get it to be dark to light the best I can. So I'm going to let that dry and move on to my next color. I'm going to use something opposite, like an orange. So I'm going to start with the most opaque color as possible. Starting at the bottom, I'm going to paint my swatch, and then I'm going to clean off my brush and pull up my gradient. The more water you use at the top, the more opaque it is going, or the more transparent it will end up being. And again, if yours got a little bit dark like mine did, feel free to use that paper towel if you have one handy. Toilet paper can also work for this if it's strong. I'm just going to go ahead and add a little more pigment there at the bottom. That's a pretty nice gradient. I'm going to let that sit. And then I'm just going to do that a few more times. And then your end result, you should be able to show different levels of transparency. So you've got your 3 swatches on top, and then you should have 5 transparency ladders at the bottom. And then once you're finished, you can snap a picture of your finished result and submit it.